Hello and welcome to Melee's Turnwheel, the series that takes a retroactive look at the Fire Emblem series chapter by chapter. I'm your host, I'm Melee Kirby, and today we're taking it back to chapters 21, 21X, and 22 of Fire Emblem, the Binding Blade. And in a sense, we're actually kind of finishing the Binding Blade today. Kind of. From a certain point of view, as a certain Obi-Wan Kenobi might put it, from a certain point of view, these are the last chapters of this game. But we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the episode. For right now, though, just excited to be here. It's been a little while since I recorded a main episode. I did those two SSS episodes, and hopefully those were to your guys' likings. So I'm just excited to get into it. So why don't we go ahead and talk about our question from last time, which was, which do you prefer between Ilia route and Sakai route? And I'm gonna look at Twitter. I don't know how much longer we're gonna be able to do this, because apparently Twitter is gonna explode any day now, is kind of what the vibe I'm getting. So I might actually start including polls on the Spotify episodes. We'll have to see. I think that's only gonna be if like Twitter actually dies, which is pretty unlikely if we're being realistic, but honestly I would not put anything past reality at this point. So I guess just be on the lookout for that. But anyway, for now, let's answer that question. At SuperUserPerson4 says, route has more challenging and engaging maps. Units you use to get route, better combat units on average. Units unique to route, better quality. But enough about Ephraim route. Sakai is garbage, so Ilia all the way. We'll talk plenty about Ephraim route. But clearly he was going for the bait and switch where he thought he was talking about Sakai route. But he says, Ilia has two maps I kind of like, 18 and 20, while Sakai is all terrible. And yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty valid. Even like the one Sakai map that could have been alright, chapter 20, is a Fog of War map. So it really gets held back in that regard, I think. At Tellius Bias says, I'd rather consign the blunders of my strategic errors to die in the beautiful frozen wastelands of Ilia than the harsh prairies of Sakai. Also, we get Juno, which is accurate. Juno fucking sucks, man. She's so bad. I know I already talked about this, but holy shit, she's a terrible unit. But she is hot and a pretty good character. At Admiral Spike says, I asked God for stronger battles, and so I'd pick Sakai any day. What else would we expect from the Thracia fan, to be honest? And then finally, at Arrowman850 says, I have not progressed on this draft in 3 years because of this map, and it is a picture of chapter 19 of Ilia. So I'm assuming he means that he prefers Sakai, but I don't know that he's actually played Sakai. So I'm gonna take his opinion with a grain of salt. So yeah, thank you for anybody who participated, and yeah, hopefully you'll answer the next question as well. Speaking of which, customary. I guess customary is maybe the wrong word because we've only done it for one other game, but this time I'm gonna ask you guys, what is your favorite and or least favorite guided map in FE6. This is the ultimate loser battle, because I really truly do think that every guided map in this game is genuinely awful. And all of them are contenders for the worst map in the game. But some of them are definitely better than others. So what is your favorite and or least favorite guided map in Fire Emblem 6? You have to do them all anyway if you want the fucking true ending, so you should all have experience with them at this point. Okay, with that out of the way, I think we can go ahead and get started on our chapters for the episode, starting with chapter 21, The Binding Blade. Roy, after many hardships and trials and tribulations, has finally made it into Bern proper. He has taken the fight to the enemy's home soil, and he is on the ground in there fighting back against Bern. Their next line of defense, I suppose, the next obstacle standing in their way is one of the Wyvern Generals. If you remember, the Wyvern Generals are three of the most powerful Bern warriors, and they're generals in the army, of course. One of them was Narshin, who he already beat. This is the second one. His name is Murdoch, and he's considered to be the strongest of the three. So this guy is not going to be a slouch by any means. The opening text narration says that this is the bloodiest day in Elibe history, which I have absolutely no problem believing. Although, actually, the bloodiest day in Elibe history is absolutely victory or death, but we are getting ahead of ourselves. I guess morphs maybe don't bleed, so I guess that is a possibility. Or maybe Eliwood mode is canon. I don't know. Okay, so the first thing you're going to notice about this chapter is that you go to pick your units and you have a shitload of deployment slots. I don't remember. Here, let me just look up how many you have real quick. You are allowed 18 units, which is one of the highest deploy limits in the entire game. There are a shitload of deploy slots. You almost certainly don't have a full 18 units that you actually want to use, and there's no, chests or anything, so bringing a thief there's no point in that either. It seems a little odd until you realize that in a kind of a clever way, this chapter is very much designed around you bringing Merlinus, which sounds weird, but we'll get to that. So yeah, you're gonna bring all of your good combat units, all of your good support units, like stat bots and things like that. You're probably gonna bring a few filler units that you had along the way, maybe some pre-promotes that aren't half bad. If you're playing hard mode, you absolutely want to bring Diane. Diane's a fantastic ally in this map. I mean, he's fantastic on normal mode too, but normal mode enemies aren't super difficult to just kill. And yeah, I mean, that's the long and short of it. Your goal is to make it from the top left of the map down to the bottom right, which is where Murdoch is. Kill Murdoch and seize the throne. And along the way, you have to traverse a pretty big map with a lot of Wyvern Riders, among other enemies, but Wyvern Riders predominantly. So what's the catch here? There's got to be some kind of gimmick or trick. We haven't had a normal map in this fucking game since chapter 16? So it's clearly not. It's got to be something fucky wucky, right? Well, it is. This map has an absurd number of enemy reinforcements, and they are determined by reinforcement zones. This is something you see a lot in most games, actually. Sometimes reinforcements are time-based, aka they will show up on turn X, whatever it is, turn 10, turn 15, whatever. Sometimes they're condition-based, so sometimes you need to beat certain objectives in the map. That one's a lot less common, but say that you have to seize more than one throne. I think there's a chapter like that in FE7, or there's I think there's a map in Engage where they fucking prank you. It turns from a kill boss map. After you kill the boss, it turns into a route map, and a shitload of reinforcements show up. So stuff like that, But this map does something a little bit we have seen before, but it's not as common as the time-based reinforcements, and that is zone-based reinforcements. If you look at the wiki of this game, preferably War of Dragons, you can see that there are multicolored squares on the map. There's a purple square, a green square, a red square, etc. But those are our reinforcement zones. And what happens is that if a unit ends their turn in a reinforcement zone, then there are certain units that are associated with that zone that just start showing up. Sometimes it's just one group, but more often in this map, it is a group of multiple enemies that show up over multiple turns. I think there's one that's 3 Wyvern Riders and a Wyvern Lord every turn for 5 turns, or something ridiculous like that. There are a shitload of these guys. And if you split your army and go multiple directions at once, it's possible that you'll trigger multiple reinforcement zones at once, and you're just going to get overwhelmed. I did try to play this map blind. I thought I could handle it on normal mode. And I was just getting so overwhelmed that I was like, okay, I can't do it. More than anything, actually, I was running out of weapon uses. I was killing so many enemies that I was running out of tomes. I was running out of lances. I was running out of axes. I was fucking down bad on weaponry, and I needed to spend all my money on boots because we'll get there, but like it's like part of the FE6 experience is that you need to buy as many boots as you can fucking afford from the secret shop. So I couldn't buy more weapons. It's a whole mess. This chapter, you're gonna hear it. This chapter has a really catchy map theme, by the way. So look forward to that. It's fucking. Some people criticize it because it's like not. It's like very upbeat and happy, and not really like fitting. Some people would say for the last stretch of the game, like the climactic final showdown. But those people are sticks in the mud, and the song fucking rules, and it's very catchy. Okay, so yeah, that's really the main gimmick of this map, if you want to call it that. It's just there's just a shitload of enemies that spawn depending on where you put your units, and if you're unprepared for it, I mean, obviously, they don't have a way for you to see the reinforcement zones. So the intent behind this map is for you to just play through normally, do whatever you want, and then, like, you'll get jumped by 20 guys every turn. And that's how I tried to play it, but eventually I was like, I can't handle this. I'm losing too many weapons. I'm losing a lot of HP. I'm not going to be able to make it through this. So I did cave and look at the reinforcement zones and try my best to avoid them unless I knew I was able to take them on. And ended up making the chapter take a very long time. I did make it by the turn limit required to get chapter 21X, but just barely. So I did turtle the shit out of this map for a while. I'm not ashamed to admit. Okay. So there are a couple of diversions in this map. First of all, there's a village which I believe has it has a night crest. Who the fuck is still using unpromoted units at this point in the game? I think next chapter has a hero crest. Like, who? Why? Who's doing this? I don't get it whatsoever, but it is, it's funny at the very least, I'll say that much. The other thing that's this map has that's very well known, if you know anything about Chapter 21, it's probably that there are a shitload of wyverns, but if you know two things about Chapter 21, it's that there are a shitload of wyverns, and there is a secret shop which sells unlimited stat boosters, including the all-coveted boots. You can buy boots on repeat in this game. You can buy as many as you can afford. There's no limit. And unfortunately, I managed my money pretty badly. I was not able to afford that many. I was only, quote unquote, I was only able to afford, I think, 6 pairs of boots. And then a speed wing. I wanted a speed wing. Oh, I forgot to mention something, but I'll come back to that in a minute. I wanted the speed wing for a very specific reason that I'll explain later. So I bought 6 pairs of boots. I gave 4 of them to Lou because I like Lou. And I was thinking about giving the rest of them to Roy or to Lalum, because those are like the most optimal strats, whatever, but I didn't. I gave them to one of my other favorite combat units for this playthrough, which was Shanna. I really like using Shanna. She's really good. So I gave her 2 pairs of boots for a little favoritism. So, I maybe should have given them to Roy, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Oh, and this is why, by the way, I mentioned that it's important for you to bring Merlinus, because Merlinus has access to your convoy. There are shops right at the start of this chapter, which serves 2 purposes. First of all, they're there to restock you when you inevitably break all your goddamn weapons fighting against the wyverns, because there's so many of them, and I guess that's there as like a failsafe. You can take out old weapons you don't need, sell them, sell any like gems or stat boosters you don't want, or promotion items you don't want, including that night crest you get possibly, and you can sell it to the shop, and then he can buy back a bunch of weapons. The other thing that you can do, though, is you can sell as much shit as you can so that you'll have plenty of money for those boots and for other stat boosters that you may want. I don't know. Okay, so here's the problem, right? I in my notes, I put Secret Shop like way at the top of the screen. I don't know why I did that instead of saving it for the end, but I skipped a couple of points as a result of that. So I apologize. We're gonna backtrack a little bit back to the prep screen, because on the prep screen I noticed something funny. There is a glitch in this game. I believe it is actually not a part of the game itself. Like, if you were to play like a physical copy of this on a Game Boy Advance or whatever, if you import a copy, this glitch would not be there. I believe it is a glitch specifically caused by one of the translation patches, one of the newer translation patches, but not like the newest one. Like, I'm using the one that was for like Awakening or whatever. You know, it has some of the more updated names, but it's not the Gwendolyn patch. Basically, it still calls her Wendy, and that's why I know her as Wendy. So anyway, if you are using this patch, there's a very specific set of things you can do. I don't recall exactly what you need to do, but I did it entirely by accident. It is possible to do on purpose, but I did it by accident. And what happens is that if you pay Hugh the minimum amount that you can, if his stats go as low as they possibly can because you're only paying him 4,000 gold or whatever it is, his stats can underflow and end up being really, really high. Now, unfortunately, they go away pretty quickly. I think it's after he levels up, they like right themselves. It's just his magic and his skill. None of his other stats do this. But I believe that after he levels up, it corrects itself. It may also be like one round of combat. There's some, I don't remember, frankly, how long you stick with these stats for. But it's not a very long time. It's a fun little diversion. You know, you can bring him to one of the maps and have him like kill somebody, and you know they lose his stats or whatever. But there is a way that you can keep them, kind of, and that is by promoting him immediately. If you promote him just right out of the gate, because he's level 15, he can promote, then you promote into having capped magic and skill. It's not quite as high as they start. I'm pretty sure that it's 40 magic and 40 skill. When the underflow happens. So it's not quite as much. I believe it's 30 skill cap for sages and then 28 magic cap for male sages. Now, unfortunately, he's still very slow, which is where the speed wings come in. I already had 2 pairs of speed wings lying around. I wasn't sure what to do. I had a lot of stat boosters lying around still. I just wasn't sure what to do with them the whole game, because I haven't needed them. Honestly, I've been just killing enemies, no problem. So I decided to give both speed wings to Hugh, and then buy him one more so that he has 16 speed, and then capped magic and skill. He's been great. I've been using him. I plan to bring him to endgame. I'm not sure. I mean, he's not going to be my 4-blaze user. That's going to be Lou for sure. But he is definitely gonna help. He's gonna kill enemies, and it's gonna be pretty cool. Okay. And then the other thing that I forgot to talk about is Mr. Yoder. We just did an SSS episode where I talked about him a lot because he had a support with, I think, Diane and Nime. So I did mention him a couple times. Unfortunately, I skipped over the battle preps in the first chapter, or the first turn, so I skipped right past him. But basically, after you start the chapter, Yoder shows up and says, hey, I read your email about the dragons or whatever. I don't know if I even mentioned this, but Roy sends a letter to Yoder during either Ilya or Sake, explaining to him the situation where Nime says that Bern has probably brought back the demon dragon, and Yoder basically shows up and says, hey, I got your letter. We agree. We also think that's what's going on. That seems to make the most sense. I am going to join your team. And also, I have brought with me a holy weapon that the church has collected for you. It is whatever weapon you did not get, or whatever weapon you did not have the opportunity to get by playing the other route. So, for example, if you played Ilya route, you could have gotten Maltet if you got the Gaiden chapter, so he brings you Merglis. And if you did Sake route, you could have gotten Merglis by getting the Gaiden chapter, so he brings you Maltet instead. I did play... This is the save that I continued from Ilya route. So I had Moltet already, so he brought Merglis with him. And then he joined your team as well. And Yoder is a pretty cool guy. I mean, I already expressed that I like him a lot as a character. We're going to be doing his full SSS episode next. He's going to be the next on the next episode, and we're going to talk a lot about him there as a character. In terms of gameplay, he is certainly a staff bot, but he's a really good one. He's not... I wouldn't say he's quite as good as Nime. He does have S stabs instead of A, but in practice, the only thing that lets him do that Nime can't also do is use the Saint Staff. And then I'm pretty sure Nime has higher magic, although I could be wrong about that. So he's about on par with Nime. He also has a light, so he's like the closest you're ever going to get to having someone who can use Aureole, which is the light holy weapon. Of course, I promoted Ellen, and I've been trying to get Ellen up to S rank, but even still, I only just got her to A rank in this past chapter, in 22, by like super feeding her kills with light tomes. I've been trying to do it as much as possible. So, realistically, the only character you're ever going to get that has, if you're just playing casually, the only character you're ever going to get that has S rank light is Yoder. So he's worth considering for that reason alone. I don't know why they didn't just have him start with S light, because you can have 2 S ranks in this game. In later games, in like the other GBA games, that is impossible. Once you have S rank in one weapon type, it locks you out of getting it in the other ones. But in this game, if you can use both swords and lances, let's say, then you can get to S in both of them, and the game will let you use both holy weapons instead of just one. I don't know why they didn't just have him start with S light as well as S staves. Doesn't really make much sense to me, but whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much what Yoder does. He can physic, he can heal, he can warp, he can rescue, he can hammer, and anything that you need a staff for, he can do just as well as Nime can. Although Nime is usually like slightly better, but not by like a huge substantial difference or anything. Okay, sorry for doing that a little backwards, just because of the way I fucked up writing my notes. But hopefully you get the gist. Yoder joins, and then you have to fight through like the entire army of Bern. I mean, that's the implication, right? Is that you are basically fighting through Bern's entire remaining army. I mean, there are still a bunch of guys left in chapter 22. And then later, chapter 23, we see that there are still plenty of guys to fight through. But this is like their big last stand. This is. I mean, it's the bloodiest day in Elibe history. It is. They're saying, okay, either we fend them off here at the Shrine of Seals, or we fucking lose, basically. And long story short, they lose. You fight Murdoch. He's very strong. He says something. He's like, "Oh man, I would love to fight Roy 1-on-1." And then if you're anything like me, you go to have Roy fight him 1-on-1 just to see what'll happen, and he gets doubled and one shot, and does like 0 damage even with the rapier. So yeah, not looking too good for Roy. One of the reinforcement zones on your way to get to Murdoch spawns Gale. Gale is a kind of a recurring minor character throughout the game. He has shown up a couple times. He clearly has a relationship with Milady. I don't think it's explicitly like they're dating or anything, but I think that's like very much the implication that we're supposed to get. He can show up here. He used to be one of the 3 Wyvern generals, but he got booted out when Narshin, like a little snake, stabbed him in the back and leaked out that he was not of pure blood Bern descent or something like that. And Gale got booted out, and Narshin took his place as one of the Wyvern generals. Gale shows up, and you can have him talk to Milady or Zeiss, and they have good conversations with both of them. Gale is the closest thing that this game has to a Camus archetype, I think. I mean, this is the danger of trying to fit people on archetypes, right? Because he doesn't really act like a Camus. He's certainly not important to the story. I don't know, like, if it's not him, though, I don't really know who else it would be. It's supposed to be, like, he's a cool guy who people like. Milady likes him, Zeiss likes him. He's like an older brother to Zeiss. But for whatever reason, he's just so loyal to Bern that he refuses to back down. And, yeah, you either have to, I mean, if you capture the throne before he shows up or before he does anything, then I assume he just dies, or maybe he goes on and lives happily ever after. Who knows? But I think the implication here is that he's supposed to die, even though it's very easy to just not kill him. He does have I don't know if this is just like a weird quirk of the AI, but he has a tendency to beeline straight for Merlinus, and instead of actually attacking anybody, he just circles around Merlinus. He doesn't attack Merlinus. He just, like, his guys form up like a box around Merlinus so that Merlinus can't go anywhere. Little weird flex, but okay, I suppose. And then you could go talk to him. You can't fight him. I was gonna write down, I wrote in my notes, like, no Milady convo, because I went to go talk to him with Milady, and I assumed, like in most conversations in Fire Emblem, that happen between a player character and an enemy, you have to fight them. So I went up and I fought him. I did cheat a little bit because I was so close to the end. This chapter was really bugging me, and Gale had 1% crit on Milady. I was like, okay, I need to fight him to see the conversation, but if he 1% crits me and kills Milady, then I'm not fucking resetting this map. So I did save state, and I didn't get crit, but there was no conversation. So I was like, huh, that's weird. I guess it like there obviously should have been, so I don't know what the deal is. Turns out that there is a talk option that I just missed, and you have to hit that, which, on the one hand, yeah, okay, I'm blind, I should have seen that there was a talk option there, but also, pretty much every other boss combo works that way, where you have one character fight another, and then they chat before they fight. So anyway, I could have not said anything. I would have kept that completely off my chest. It didn't end up mattering. I didn't need to load the save state. And realistically, I was only doing it to see all the content. I could have just captured the throne and left. So I don't feel too bad about it, but I like to be as transparent as I possibly can be. That's it. I think that's everything. Oh, Echidna died. And I didn't reset. Echidna is dead. Rip Bozo. Ha ha ha. She's fucking gone. To be fair, it was mostly my fault. I needed, like, the accuracy of a sword or something, so I used the sword, and then I forgot to trade it off for before she got attacked by, like, 6 wyverns, and they all had weapon triangle advantage, and hit her, and she died. So, that's totally on me. Definitely a very preventable death, for Echidna there, but I didn't feel like resetting, so she is staying dead. I think that's everything. I'm just double checking because I've already missed a shitload of stuff. One thing that I was supposed to mention at the beginning, I'm going to have to mention later now, because I don't want to derail this any further than it has been. Okay. Yeah, that is everything. Chapter 21 is a, alright map. Honestly, I kind of like it, to be completely honest. It's fun. I like that there's just waves upon waves of enemies that you have to mow through. Is it a little tedious? Yeah. Is it a little bullshit that the reinforcement zones work the way they do and are so punishing for something that you have absolutely no control over if you're playing blind? Yeah, that's frustrating, but it's still kind of cool. In the same way that I actually really like the Tellius bridge maps, if you know where the pitfalls are, because then you can manipulate them in such a way where it's fun game design. It's one of those maps that I think improves substantially if you know what you're doing, and I think that has value. It should definitely be taken on its own merits, though, and so I don't think this is, like, winning any awards or anything, but it is cool. It's a nice, like, gameplay story integration set piece where you're basically finishing off the Bern army. So we capture the throne, and it turns out that there are actually 2 holy weapons, or legendary weapons, in the Shrine of Seals. There's the Binding Blade, which is what we're here for, and then if you beat the chapter in enough time, and Milady and Zeiss both need to be alive, you also unlock Chapter 21X, which is called The Elder Revelation, which is fucking awesome. I love that name. The gist is that we're going in, we're going to get the Apocalypse Tome, which is the legendary Dark Tome, wielded by Bramamond. We get a little bit of lore for each of the, I almost said Crusaders, this is not genealogy, for each of the heroes, every time we get a legendary weapon chapter. So there is Bramamond lore later in this chapter, and that's pretty cool. We'll talk about it when we get there. There's a really nice song that plays here. I don't know what it's called, but it's like the opening narration for the chapter where it's like, Roy entered the Binding Seal Temple and entered into the lair of the Dark Magic Tome or whatever. Whatever music plays there fucking rules, and I like it. Okay. Now, couple things. First of all, this is a Fog of War chapter. Already not off to a great start. Second of all, you're not Vegeta. Third of all, you'll never be... No, how's it go? First of all, I am Vegeta. Second of all, you're not Vegeta. Third of all, you'll never be Vegeta, but you want to be Vegeta, but you'll never be Vegeta because I'm Vegeta. There we go. Okay, got it. Anyway, first of all, Fog of War. Second of all, huge, enormous map that has, like, it is, like, the most warp-skippable map of all fucking time. There is a clear avenue, you can just warp on through, is clear, honestly, it's, like, on par with some Thracia maps in terms of, they definitely intended for you to warp-skip this, but because I'm fucking stupid and want to play in a certain way, I have to play it. But it's just so tedious. The enemies aren't strong. There's like one brave sword hero that jump scared the shit out of me and killed Ellen on when I got close on my first attempt through the map. But for the most part, like the enemies here are really weak. The only time you would ever lose is if you're like me, and I did lose a few times because I got very sloppy and lazy and just started putting characters in range of just bad odds. So this chapter does take a while if you're not warp skipping. However, it has one of my favorite mechanics in the entire series. I guess maybe mechanics is the wrong word. It has one of my favorite gimmicks in the entire series. There are 6 chests in the chapter. And each chest, when you open it, has a random chance, a 50-50 chance, of being either an elixir or a manakete. Sometimes, 50% of the time, when you open a chest, instead of an item, a manakete will come out of the chest and fight you. I mean, it comes out and then you have a chance to kill it before it can do anything. But, like, that's so funny to me. Like, did they put the manaketes inside the chests? Like, what's going on here? Unfortunately, as fucking awesome of a concept as this is, it's really, it falls flat, right? I really wish that it would be, because I think this has some serious potential. I mean, it's always going to be riggable, right? Like, you can, just soft reset the map until you get what you want. The problem with it as it stands right now is that if you know that the only things in the chests are elixirs, you have no reason to engage with them, because elixirs are fucking dog shit. As long as you haven't lost all your healers, there's no reason that you can't just use heal staves. Especially since you just got the Holy Saint, which is the legendary staff. So there's no reason why you can't just do that instead. It kind of hinges on the fact that you don't know what's going to be in the chests to get you to open one, and then suddenly you realize, oh, okay, maybe this wasn't worth it. And then on subsequent playthroughs, you're just not going to bother because you probably looked it up and you realize that there's only elixirs there, and it's just not worth it. So here's my proposal for how to do this same setup in an alternate way. And it's possible that there is a chapter later in the series that does this that I'm forgetting about. If that is the case, then I am going to give full credit to that when we get there. But here's what I think they could have done. Have the items in the chests be stat boosters. Have them be a pair of boots, a speed wing, an energy ring, a Draco shield, like whatever. One of each if you need to. Or at least one of multiple. And have there be way more chests. So there are 30 use lockpicks in this game. You can steal one lockpick from a thief, and then suddenly you have enough lockpicks to get through the entire game. Not to mention chest keys. Like, there are not enough chests in this game to go through that many lockpick uses. So, what I would propose is make there be, 30 chests in this chapter. Maybe have it be, all chests, practically. And then there are stat boosters. There are always going to be stat boosters. It's not random if you get the stat booster or not. But the chests that have the stat boosters in them are shuffled. Kind of like what they did in Chapter 4 of Thracia, which I'm going to put the irony aside for a second. I know I fucking hate that chapter, but I think they could use that idea for similar effect, or to much greater effect here. If they shuffled the chests that have the stat booster in them. So you would again, you could rig, there would always be an option to just rig until you get only stat boosters and get no manaketes. But at that point, you're just cheating the system. If people are going to cheat, that's fine. There's always going to be people like that. But if you're the average player, you are incentivized to engage with the mechanic, be prepared to fight manaketes, and get ready to, you would get a lot of potential reward out of it. But, and that's the other thing too. You just came out of a chapter with a whole bunch of stat boosters from a secret shop. So this serves a couple of purposes, right? On the one hand, if you didn't get the member card, or you didn't know the secret shop was there, it lets characters who didn't get a chance to buy those stat boosters, or players who didn't get a chance to buy those stat boosters, kind of catch up in that regard. But also, if you did know about the secret shop, you could safely pass this up, and you can make them. It becomes a much more meaningful decision when you're passing up good items to avoid the hassle. So that, like, it offers a few different options, while heavily incentivizing you to engage with the mechanic. I think that would have been a really cool system. Maybe 30 chests is too much, but like whatever number of stat boosters you put in, like double that. So it'd probably be like 12 to 15 chests. I don't know. It might sound annoying, and maybe it would be. Maybe if they actually put it in this way, it would be awful. But I think it would be kind of cool, and I would actually vibe with this chapter a lot more, because I think the concept of you opening a chest and a fucking Manakete popping out is so goddamn funny. I don't know. I can't help myself. I feel like that would be a super interesting mechanic if they really leaned into you engaging with it more. Which, as it stands right now, the optimal play is to just not bother, because elixirs are fucking worthless, and you could theoretically only get elixirs or only get Manaketes, so it's not worth it to. It's a mess. I think they really could have stood to revamp this. If they ever do an FE6 remake, I would love to see a change like this implemented, because I think that would be way cooler. Okay, I just went on that like 10-minute rant about the chests in this chapter, but that's because there's really nothing else to say about it. You get to the end, you really, really slowly, interminably make your way to the end of the chapter. You kill the boss, and you capture the throne. You get your hands on the Apocalypse Tome. I just in my notes I just wrote, "This map sucks," which I think is accurate. You get the Apocalypse Tome. It is the legendary Dark Tome, going straight onto Ray. I can tell you that much. The users of it are Ray, Nime, or Sophia. So, either you don't have someone who can use it, or if you do, it's probably Nime, but whatever. Okay, and this is where we get the Bremen lore. This is, if you've played FE7 before, then this is kind of one of the areas where they deliver on that setup really well. I think Bremen is really cool in FE7. Basically, the lore that we get about him here, or them here, I suppose I should say, is that there's no records that exist about Bremen at all. We don't know whether they were a man or a woman. We don't know if they were young or old. We know nothing about them. They're a complete blank slate. And it turns out, in FE7, I'm not going to spoil it too much, but it turns out that is kind of the whole point. They are a blank slate. And they're any and none of those things. It's kind of weird. I don't want to spoil it, because I think it's a cool reveal in that game. One of the coolest things about FE7's story, which isn't saying much, but it's pretty cool. I like it a lot. So we'll save that though for when we get there. For now, all you need to know is that Bramamund is kind of an enigma. They are no one really knows anything about them. Now, we finally have gotten our hands on the Binding Blade, the game's namesake. In order to pull it from the sheath, you need to put the fire emblem on the hilt or something like that. It's like built into the hilt, and then you can open it up and you can pull out the fire or the Binding Blade. This is why hanging on to the fire emblem was both symbolically important. It was a Bern national treasure that Guinevere wasn't trusting to Roy. She was putting Bern's future in his hands. That's pretty cool. But it's also very literally and mechanically important, because without the Binding Blade, or without the fire emblem, he never would have been able to get the Binding Blade. So what happens here is that Roy promotes, and he gets like decent stats across the board. I mean, he gets like +2 and everything, I think. So if you barely trained Roy up to this point, he's not going to be winning any awards. But the thing about the Binding Blade is that it is really strong. In fact, I'm going to look up the weight, or the might right now, just to see how strong it is, because it's very, very high. 18 might. That is, I'm pretty sure Durandal. Let's see, Durandal. Yeah, it's stronger than Durandal at 20 or at 17 might. So it's a little bit stronger than that, and it's effective against dragons. It's the whole kit and caboodle. So Roy suddenly turns into a halfway decent unit when he gets his hand on this. I mean, he's still not going to be great if you haven't trained him, But he is gonna certainly do a shitload of damage and probably kill dragons. That's really all you need at this point. When he gets his hand on it, Roy sees what he interprets to be a snippet of Hartmut's memories. Hartmut is the man who, kind of the leader of the Seven Heroes. He was the guy who went on to found Bern. He was the guy who wielded the binding blade in the scouring. And this is actually something that I forgot to mention at the beginning of chapter 21. When Yoder arrives with new information about the demon dragon, he tells Roy that Hartmut actually spared the demon dragon's life. This is new information, because previously it was thought that Hartmut just killed the demon dragon. That's why everyone's like, well, how are they doing this? The demon dragon should be dead. So did they bring it back to life? What's going on? It turns out that Hartmut only sealed it away. We don't know why. We just know that it is Hartmut chose to spare the demon dragon. It's also at this point that we gather that the demon dragon is most likely the priestess who has been by Zephiel's side this entire game. We saw her in chapter 3. I'm pretty sure we saw her in chapter 13. And we're going to see her again next chapter. Her name is Idun, and she is most likely the demon dragon, just based on the fact that she's always near Zephiel, and the other dragons started showing up around the time that records of her began appearing. So, putting two and two together, they gather that she is most likely the unsealed demon dragon. I believe that's everything, so it's time to move on for our last chapter of the episode, which is called Chapter 22, An Undying Dream. The fandom wiki actually, whatever translation they're going off of, this chapter is actually called The Never Ending Dream, which I do like that title a little bit more. I think that has a kind of couple of different layers to it. But I think the Undying Dream is also pretty good. So Roy has made it to Bern Castle. And, I mean, yeah, that's it, basically. Roy has made it to Bern Castle. And this is it. This is the final battle, in some ways. This is, I guess I can stop beating around the bush. I was going to save it for the end, but I might as well say it here. This is the last chapter of the game if you did not meet the requirements to continue the chapter towards the good ending. In order to get the good ending, you have to have obtained and maintained all legendary weapons. So you had to have gotten all of them by playing every Gaiden chapter, and none of them can be broken. If you have all of them by the end of this chapter, then you will go to the remaining 2 or 3 maps, depending on how you want to look at it, and finish the game. And from there, you can either get the good ending or like the bad good ending. We'll talk more about that later. Or in the next main episode, I suppose. So, for a lot of people, this is the final battle of the game. Roy is here, he's on the Zephiel's doorstep, and he has decided that he is going to, march in and beat Zephiel and reclaim the land and end the war, essentially. Before the battle starts, Zephiel, oh god, no, god, no, please, no. Zephiel sends Brunya away. Brunya is the remaining Wyvern General. She is very loyal to Zephiel, and he says, you need to get out of here. Brunya puts up a fight. She says, no, I want to stay by your side. I don't want to leave. He says, I don't remember even exactly what he says here. Let me check. Okay. So essentially what he's doing here is, he tells Idun to leave. He says, Idun, you're going to get out of here. Brunya, I need you to protect Idun with your life. And Brunya, puts up a fight. She says, no, I don't want to do that. I'm loyal to you. I don't want to leave. And he says, then, this is my command to you as your king. Do as I say. And she eventually acquiesces. Before Idun leaves, he says to her, if I die, the plan continues, which is very important. And if you don't get the good ending, then presumably very bad things happen. So the goal of this chapter is to make it to the throne room, and kill Zephiel and seize the throne. In order to do that, you need a couple of things. First of all, you need to step on 2 buttons that are on either side of the map. There's one on the top left, and there's one on the top right. Once you step on those two buttons, you need to be standing on those two buttons, and then Roy needs to stand in front of the door to Zephiel's throne room, and then it will open. Along the way, there are going to be plenty of enemies. There's some guarding the buttons. There's some that come as reinforcements once you open the door, and then there's some that come from inside the throne room. There's staircases for enemies to come and jump you basically while you're trying to kill Zephiel. Honestly, that's really the long and short of it. It is a mad dash to these buttons before the reinforcements can get too overwhelming, and you clear out the throne room as best as you can. And if you're playing on hard mode, apparently the enemies in the throne room are like really, really difficult. On normal mode, they're pretty easy. For the most part, there are a couple Manicheets, but you can get rid of them pretty consistently. And then you just gotta kill Zephiel, which, let me tell you, easier said than done. He is extremely strong, and beating him reliably and consistently is extremely difficult. There are not a lot of people that can do significant damage to him. He hits like a freight train. He one-shot some of my characters, and he's pretty accurate. So he's definitely no slouch, and you need to be able to take him out consistently. I mean, if you're using save states, that's a completely different story. But for me, I couldn't really crit rig. I could use supports, but that's about it. When Roy opens the door to the throne room to initially confront Zephiel, they have a little debate about like what the purpose of this whole war really was, and like why Zephiel decided to do what he did. Now I do remember a lot of it. I am refreshing my memory by looking at the wiki script, but the wiki script seems like a pretty old translation, so I'm hoping that nothing gets too messed up. But I'm gonna try my best to communicate what I remember through the lens of reading it again. So all it boils down to is Zephiel hates humans. He thinks humans are the worst because he feels that they are driven by petty emotions like greed, jealousy, anger, sadness. These are the things that he conceptualizes as being the underlying truths of humanity, and that people govern themselves and each other on these emotions. And of course, he would think that, considering that those are the emotions that caused his own father to try to kill him. That's a pretty big deal, and I can understand how you go away from that with a significantly altered worldview. Perhaps a much more cynical one. Zephiel and Roy kind of go back and forth on the efficacy of this plan. Zephiel makes a pretty good point early on, which is that Roy has seen this happen a lot. Every single place that he has gone to has been betrayed in some form or another. Lycia had the Laos soldiers who betrayed them. Bern and Ilia were taken down, especially not Bern, Sakei and Ilia, especially Sakei, were taken down by traitors on the inside. But both of them had people fighting against them. Etruria had Roritz and Accardo. These sorts of things happen everywhere. It's kind of implied. This is a stretch, I'll admit, but in Arcadia, if you remember, Igreen is like, how did they even know where we were? They're not supposed to know that this place exists. So that could imply the existence of a traitor. It could just mean that Idun can sense dragons. That's probably the more likely explanation, but it's worth mentioning. A lot of even individual story arcs in like supports and stuff have to do with betrayal and anger and sadness and the cycle of hatred. And it's so I don't want to overplay this, right? Like, it's a pretty overdone trope. I'm not going to pretend like Fire Emblem 6 is reinventing the wheel or anything, but Zephiel makes some pretty understandable arguments about why humans are fallible creatures, that maybe ultimately the world would be better off if they were just all gone. His alternative, though, is replacing them with the dragons, and Roy says, why would the dragons be any different? And Zephiel says, well, these dragons they don't have emotions. The dragons that Idun, the demon dragon, creates, they don't have senses of self. They don't have emotions. They just are pure analytical creatures, and so they would be much better and much more suited to ruling the world than humans are. And Roy says, well, sure, they don't have emotions, and sure, humans have a lot of shitty emotions, but ultimately humans do fix their wrongdoings. They can learn from their mistakes. They have emotions that lend them to helping people as well. Like it is a very classic, like, this is why humanity is bad. Yes, but humanity's good elements outweigh them tremendously, and ultimately make us as a collective, as a species, as a human race, worth fighting for and protecting. It's a story as old as dirt, especially in JRPGs, or RPGs in general. But damn, if it isn't pretty cool sometimes. I especially vibe with Zephiel's point of I think this is an overall really smart decision by the story to have Roy fight so many of these traitors, people who betrayed their homelands for their own personal interests, and then have Zephiel call him out on that. Like, you've seen plenty of this in your journeys. You can't tell me that I'm wrong about this. And Roy doesn't try to tell him that he's wrong, in that sense at least. So, I don't know. It's pretty cool. I think Zephiel is overall a pretty interesting antagonist. I think he suffers a lot from having so little screen time. This is basically the only time we get to see, like, him, like, what he really believes in. So I definitely think he could have stood to be fleshed out more. But, I don't know. He's still pretty cool. I still vibe with him pretty well. Okay. You beat Zephiel. You capture the throne. And the game's over. I am actually going to go ahead and look up what happens in the bad ending. I've never gotten the bad ending of FE6 before, so I would love to see. In fact, actually, hold on. Can I? Actually, no, I didn't. I didn't save state. I should have save stated right before Zephiel so that I could break a weapon and then. Okay, so unfortunately, the bad ending is honestly not that interesting. It basically just boils down to them being like, "Oh, where's Idun? We can't find her. Oh well, let's just leave." And I'm sure things will sort itself out. Guinevere does show up very briefly. She's actually one of the first people that Roy talks to, and she's like, "But I need a second," and then runs away. So unfortunately, the game doesn't really. If you get the last few chapters, the game doesn't really focus on her reaction to Zephiel's death, which I think is a crying shame. At least maybe it'll happen in the next few chapters. But overall, it's pretty mundane. They just say, "Oh, we won. Now we got to go make a world of peace by human hands." I don't know if the same ending credit scroll happens in the good ending. So if it does, I'll talk about it there too, I guess. But in this ending, there's like and Roy went on to after the war, Bern surrendered to Etruria, etc., all the stuff that happened, and then they say centuries after Roy's lifetime, the banners of Elibe united together against whatever. But that is another story, it says, which is like, okay, I get that there was a lot of potential for a story about Hector and Eliwood, because they're like pretty interesting in this game, but like they don't really expand upon them at all. I just don't understand why do a prequel and risk fucking up this game's story and like a bunch of contradictory bullshit instead of just doing another. If you wanted to do another game set in the same continent, you could have just had one take place like a few hundred years from now, where all the continents or all the countries of Elibe need to gather their forces under one banner for some kind of outside invasion, maybe from dragons. Maybe you could do a version where it's like, this is the aftermath of the bad ending or whatever. Kind of like a Wind Waker type deal where it's like, that way you wouldn't undermine Roy's efforts, because if anything, it would enhance them, because you're like, this is what would have happened if Roy failed. That could be kind of cool. I would like that. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, but I have a lot to say about FE7 and how they kind of fucked with the story of FE6, but we'll get there when we get there. Soon, hopefully. Other than that, the bad ending is pretty mundane. But if you do have all of the divine weapons, and none of them are broken, then you get the ending where Roy is like, "Oh, finally, it's all over," and then Elfin shows up and is like, "Or is it?" And all of the legends say that all divine weapons brought together will point the way to the dragon temple. It's some like prophecy bullshit. And it turns out that the last legendary weapon was not the Binding Blade. It was Ekisax, which is Zephiel's sword. That was Hartmut's legendary weapon, which raises the question that Roy brings up of, well, if that was the legendary weapon, then what the hell is the Binding Blade? Could it be something even more powerful than the legendary weapons? We'll have to see. But for now, that's all there is to it. They have a direct line, like all of them come together and there's like a glowing light and the light's pointing in the direction that they need to go. I think there's like a big earthquake, and it turns out that it opened the dragon temple where there's people, there's dragons that they can go and fight, whatever. It's pretty mundane stuff. We're going to see that next couple of chapters is kind of their foray into the dragon temple. But for now, that's where we're going to leave you guys, or that's where I'm going to leave you guys. And yeah, next episode should be the last main episode, followed by the wrap-up episode. And then somewhere in there will be 2 more SSS episodes. So I'm really hoping to get this game finished by August, which I think is reasonable. I think I can edit this and put out another SSS episode by the end of the week. Maybe we'll have to see, and then we can go from there. So I don't know. We're gonna have to see. So I forgot to record the news / what I'm doing / map gauntlet for the end when I recorded the episode proper, and it's now the 4th of July, so you might hear some fireworks in the background. But happy 4th of July, everybody, if you're from America and give a shit. So for the map gauntlet this time around, I'm thinking probably Chapter 21. It's not amazing. I have my problems with it. I think it's definitely, fucky-wucky if you play blind. But so is Chapter 22, to be honest. The reinforcements in the throne room are bullshit. The same turn ambush spawns. If you don't know they're there, then you just get jump scared and probably get killed. So yeah, I like 21 and 22, but they're not winning any awards, if you ask me. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this one, it could go either way, but I'm leaning towards Chapter 21 right now. And it is certainly not better than Chapter 11A, which means I think pretty confidently Chapter 11A is my favorite map in the game. There are a couple that came close. I think 16 is pretty good. I think 7 is really good. I think there are a couple more that don't come to mind right now, but I think those 3 in particular are really solid contenders. But yeah, I think 11A takes it, all things considered. I mean, we still technically have 3 chapters left, but none. I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. None of them are winning. So yeah, Chapter 11A, best map in FE6, if you ask me. But maybe you didn't. Maybe you don't care. In which case, why are you listening to this? Go away. I don't give it. Why do you give a shit? Okay, time for some news, if there is any. Let's see. Absolutely fucking nothing. Actually, did I mention this in the last episode? I might have. The FE6 and FE7 coming to the Nintendo Switch Online Game Boy Advance thing. I'm pretty sure I went on a whole rant about how this isn't worth it last time, but I could be wrong. FE6, unfortunately, is only coming to the Japanese. They are not doing a localization for this game, which would be really cool. I wish they would localize the old Fire Emblem games, but FE7 is coming to the English one as well. That's really it in terms of news. There's a Corrin figure that I don't care about, and yeah, it's just the Engage popularity poll. So yeah, nothing really much going on in the news section for this episode. In terms of what I've been doing, I've been playing a lot of games. I've been continuing Cold Steel 3. I have very mixed opinions about that game. I did actually also just beat... What game did I just beat? Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I just beat that game for the first time. I am very bad with scary games. I don't like scary games. That's not true. I do like scary games, but they are scary, and I'm a little piss baby when it comes to scary games. So I did have to glue myself to a walkthrough for a good chunk of it, but overall, I really enjoyed myself. I thought the scary parts were still very scary, even with the walkthrough. The walkthrough did not prepare me for everything, so I was still properly spooked in a couple of places here or there. So overall, really fun game. Really recommend that to anybody who is a fan of horror games. I know. So I would say that you do kind of need a walkthrough because some of the puzzles are very weird and obscure, and they require you to like make observations or explore areas that aren't entirely intuitive. But if you can get past that, if you don't mind maybe looking up a guide every now and again, it's a fun game. It's good. It defined the horror genre for years and years. Like this is still a benchmark that a lot of horror series are trying to live up to. So yeah, that's all. If anything else pops up, I'll be sure to mention it in the next episode. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.